everybody. Thanks again for coming to the Geotab Mobility Connect in Barcelona. It's a pleasure to having all of you here. My name is Ivan Lequerica. I'm the director of Geotab for Southern Europe, and I'm here to introduce our next speaker. So we all know that mobility world is everywhere. So Dirk explained that the OEMs do not want to be perceived as car manufacturers anymore, but digital mobility service providers. We recently attended a show in Paris in which the Minister of Transportation gave a speech of 30 minutes, 40 minutes about how the data is going to change the mobility industry. So that's why we wanted to have an expert, not only in mobility patterns, but also in technology adoption and how this is going to impact the society. I have the pleasure to introduce Stijn Otten. He's one of the largest experts in mobility and energy. He has huge experience in corporate innovation and startup initiatives, and he recently won the Fleet Europe Talent Award for 2018. So please welcome to the stage, Stijn.
Well, what an introduction. Let's stay humble, and it was the award for the Netherlands, not for whole Europe. And maybe you meant the tallest, not the biggest. I don't know, but no, I'm here to talk about for the next 15 minutes or so about the combination or the integration of two big industries, incumbent industries that have been working together or have been working apart for the last decades, but now slowly are integrating. And that is the industry of mobility on one side, and the other side, the industry of energy. So these industries are merging. A bit of my background, I started off helping a startup getting lift off. This startup was called New Motion back in the Netherlands. Charging infrastructure for electric cars, payment systems, etc., etc. So I used to work there, and more recently I used to work for a car leasing company called Business Lease, part of the Autobink family, Autobink group. And recently I started an initiative called Heat Transformers, which is a company within the energy sector, and specifically on transforming residential homes from gas to electricity. So this is my topic, and in this 15 minutes I'll try and combine those three experiences I have together with the combination of mobility and energy. So I would like to start off with this picture. This picture is right in the beginning of New Motion. You see there's a lot of things going on in this picture, but you see me standing here a bit nervous because it's on one hand it's a party, and on the other hand we are test driving our newly bought Tesla Roadster. So that combination wasn't really suited well. But what we did back then in Amsterdam is we celebrated every 10th charging station being installed in the Netherlands. So we would go up there and we would throw a party, we would let people experience the electric driving, but drinking and driving wasn't always the best, at least not with this car. This car is, by the way, still driving, still owned by New Motion. But what you also see is, you see the charging stations over here. The car is not plugged in yet, but this guy is. And that guy is the DJ. So we called him the bicycle DJ. So he came in with a carrier bicycle and plugged in his DJ set into the charging station and started throwing a party. So that was kind of, we call it the plug-in parties, and we went all over Amsterdam having these parties. And it got a lot of attention. But the good thing is that's something you don't see in this picture, is that these first charging infrastructures was connected to the homes next to it. So these two charging stations were connected to the grid connection of that building behind it. So the charging stations afterwards were connected to the grid of the street, of the municipality, but the first charging infrastructure was connected to homes. I will come to this later. By the way, never had a crash with the Tesla at these parties. So After that, I joined Business Lease, a car leasing company in 6 countries in Europe, part of the Autobink group. And for the past 25 years, car leasing always has been a very stable, long-term growth engine in Europe. So it's a stable, almost financial institution that facilitated mobility through financing schemes. In the last 5 to 6 years, things developed quite rapidly on the spectrum of collaborations with all different kinds of other parties, and on the other side also the spectrum of within the company, starting up new initiatives, collaborating with other companies, starting joint ventures. So Autobink specifically started up with a smart mobility division. Hans, who heads this division, is also in the room right here. And that unlocked an enormous potential moving towards being a mobility provider more than just a financing provider. One thing I would like to highlight is I was the fortunate position also to help start Move Connected Mobility, who is a partner of Geotab in the realm of connected mobility. And specifically, and that's one I would like to highlight based on the topic of this talk, is zelfstroom. Zelfstroom in Dutch means your own electricity. So this was already a first branch of looking at all the bigger developments going on in the world in the mobility. There is things going on in electric mobility and things connected to electric mobility. So zelfstroom provides leased solar panels. So instead of purchasing them, you lease them, you put them on the roof, and the reduction of the electricity, or the reduction of the energy cost outweighs the cost, monthly cost of the solar panels. So this report, diving in a bit deeper on mobility. We all are mobility experts. I want to say that I'm the biggest one, or maybe the tallest one, but not the biggest one. And I think this report should I wouldn't say should be known by everyone, but if you haven't known, if you don't know this report, please take a look and at least read the headlines and read the big conclusions out of it, because this report from 2017 from Tony Seba shook the world quite a bit of stating some bold statements, feeling almost outrageous, but in a weird way also quite realistic. So the one thing he said in this report was by 2030, within 10 years of regulatory approval, which of course is an important note in this case, of autonomous vehicles, 95% of US passenger miles, so passengers, so not business-related miles, passenger miles, will be served by on-demand, autonomous, electric vehicles owned by fleets, not by individuals, in a new business model we call transport as a service. This one sentence entails, I think, 5 of the biggest mobility trends that are now going on in the market. So first of all, I would almost say connected, because on-demand and autonomous vehicles, they need to be connected. Second of all, autonomous. So you have 5 levels of autonomy, but in this case they meant really full autonomy level 5. Owned by fleets, so in that case you don't purchase your vehicle but lease your vehicle, or in other schemes, or you get your vehicle by subscription, or you get your vehicle by demand. So I need a particular vehicle right now, like almost that Uber is providing you the vehicle parked in front of your door. In a new business model called TaaS, or MaaS, or whatever you may call it, but that's the integration of different forms of mobility towards in one package. So put it into perspective, meaning put it into words and pictures and aligned instead of in one big sentence. These are kind of the 5 biggest things now happening in the mobility market in different levels of adoption and in different stages of where we are right now. So I'd like to dig in a bit deeper, because technology only doesn't disrupt. The adoption of technology disrupts. So when it comes to trends and the adoption of trends, there's always I would almost say a social aspect to it, or a human aspect to it, because without adoption you have no technology whatsoever. We all know Google Glass, you know. It's a nice technology, but it didn't really felt right, and people really didn't buy it because they felt a bit cheeky. But when someone looked at your face with a Google Glass, I always felt like, hey, he's recording me. I can't tell something personal or do funny stuff. So the combination of technology and adoption is an important aspect to it. So shared mobility, electric mobility is obvious. It's about the propulsion. Connected mobility, it's a broad spectrum. We have heard quite a lot of things about today already. Autonomous mobility is from level 1 that you are assisted with parking, for instance, to level 5 that you have no steering wheel in the car and all the levels in between. And integrated, meaning that you combine different forms of mobility into one particular subscription or one particular model. It doesn't mean that you need to drive a cycle or a bicycle, but it's a combination of both. But let's have a show of hands to see if we can see in this room which are the two biggest trends currently impacting the mobility. So if you have an honest share of hands, if you have shared your car to someone you don't know and got paid for it. I see 2, 3 people. All right. Electric mobility. Who is driving an electric car or a plug-in car or, for that sake, even a hybrid car? All right. Already a substantial amount of more people. Third, connected mobility. I know there are a lot of potential geotabbers in the room, but let me still ask it. Who of you know or drive in a car who is connected, whether or not by a device like the Geotab or a in-car technology of the bigger brands in Europe? All right, so almost all of you. Who is driving an autonomous vehicle? More or less, right. So who's driving an autonomous vehicle and doesn't hold his steering wheel on the highway? One. And who has access to integrated mobility? In that sense, who uses different forms of mobility, going to work, to family, to whomever, using train, bikes, public transport, and vehicles all combined together in one subscription. All right. So my argumentation is that these two are the biggest, impacting the current mobility market, and I will make an argument why I think this is the case. So again, it's the strength lies in combining, and the strength lies in implementing technology and facilitating the adoption, like I said before. So I'd like to give you some live examples from past experience I had in business leads to show you where the strength lies in combining technology with adoption. So first, one thing we did within business leads is working together with Uber, also helped by in this case by Move, is connect the cars we provided to Uber. And the case was risk management and efficiency. Risk management because the Uber drivers are not the most credit-worthy people, one, and you could argue not the safest drivers. So together in this case with Move and Geotab, we facilitated a weekly billing based on mileage. We had a monitoring report based on aesthetic driving style. So if someone would drive like a lunatic, it would get either a lunatic bill or a lunatic insurance fee, or we could monitor it more closely, and even the top 10% request them to take back their cars, because those 10% would cost almost 60% of the insurance damages. So that created an engine, an efficiency engine that was in the initial case unheard of. But it lies in the combination of both the connected and the security part. Another part was really based on added value proposition, which was a private lease proposition combining with a peer-to-peer car sharing proposition named Snapcar. Again, that's helped by Move, and the added value here was we could offer a car for €100 per month if we could integrate the sharing into the billing from day one. So we would guarantee that your car would be shared at least a couple of times a month based on your proximity, where you would live. And we would then offer a car for 100 euros instead of 200 euros or 250 euros, which is the standard price for these vehicles. So the connection of data sets, knowing where the car is, and then connecting it to a proposition front end to the consumer was an example of, again, connecting two different technologies in a way that is acceptable for the end user. And last but not least, we call it connected maintenance, which was really based on operational efficiency. We installed in the business lease fleet a large portion of the fleet with devices, and based on these devices, we could track the type of vehicles, we could track the mileage, and based on the combination of those two, we would bounce them with the data set we have about all the data around MRT, or about maintenance, repair, and tires. And if a car would come close to, for instance, standard maintenance of a particular car, we would send proactively a message. We would proactively steer them towards preferred network. We would proactively steer the parts. We would proactively do a lot of stuff. So we wouldn't pay the primary, I would say, price for getting your car maintained by OEMs. This is, of course, a push away from OEM maintenance, but this created an enormous operational efficiency. The trick is to make the operational work, and that's a really difficult case. It has to be proven, but this shows that the combining of technologies based on the value, in this case, of operational efficiency, and in the previous case on added value of the end customer, and the previous case with Uber on security and other topics, you see that in the strength lies in combining the different aspects. So what lies on the horizon? So what is the next step? So like I said, energy is now moving forward. A standard, let's say, a Tesla holds enough energy for more than a week's worth of a family's home usage of electricity. And that creates friction, but it also creates a lot of opportunity. So Matt Stevens will talk about it later after this talk, so I won't say too much about it in detail. But this was already the case when the first picture when we saw in Amsterdam, when this house had 2 charging stations in front of the house. It was connected to the home grid, and 2 weeks later the grid connection blew in this house because there were 2 cars charging at the same time. There was a cooker on, there was something else on, and all of a sudden it bursted. And it happened around 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. And why? Because 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, everybody gets home, they connect their car, they start boiling water for a tea, or they start cooking or whatsoever, maybe a sauna, I don't know. But at least energy is being used at that time, so you have a large peak. And this large peak, the whole grid is built on facilitating peaks. So there's a big potential friction if more cars come to the electrical grid, are connected to the electrical grid. And on top of this, houses are now also being more and more electrified. So the new initiative I'm working on is about electrifying existing residential homes from natural gas heating to electrical heating. So in this case, heat pumps or hybrid heat pumps. So this creates another electrical load on the already existing grid. So if you have a standard home, you have an electric car, you have a heat pump, and everything comes in at the same time, that is not a sustainable way of operating. So what you see now is, and that's where you see the last couple of months energy and mobility starting to merge more rapidly. You see, and the only use case is what I found now is in the Netherlands, that you see energy companies providing mobility services. So energy companies are handing out charging passes or charging cards. And they're also offering services to charge your electric car in a way with sustainable energy coming from that same provider, because they want to sell you more electricity. On the other hand, you see a development of large car fleets stepping into the realm of energy. Like I said, a car battery is almost a full week's worth of family energy, in this case electrical energy. And if you have a fleet of, let's say, 1,000 of electric cars, you have quite a substantial amount of energy that you can potentially steer towards an energy company or a grid company saying, hey, if you have problems, I can maybe tune up or tune down the speed of charging. And on the other hand, you can give this value also to the front consumer, because they might only be interested if my car is charged in the morning, 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever, then it's fine. And if it's charged in the night instead of at 6 o'clock when I'm at home, then it's fine by me. So you see, I predict that in the coming months or so, or quarters, big car owners, fleets will step into the energy sector based on this potential added value. And on the other hand, I predict that energy companies will move more and more towards mobility. So there's enough space and enough topics to talk about specifically this topic, but I want to end up with that connectivity and mobility are here to stay. That's something that is definite, I would almost say. Connectivity and mobility is a killer growth market. So if you just see what Geotab is doing and just the market as a whole, it's just enormous, I would say. Mobility will get more and more towards electric vehicles. Just the OPEX of electric vehicles is much more better than the operational cost of electric vehicles is much better than gasoline vehicles. And when the capital costs, the purchase costs are also coming down, this is really rapidly going towards the direction that everybody will drive an electric car. And I would say everyone is a bit of, it's maybe too blunt statement, but a significant portion will be eligible and will be a good fit to drive an electric car, even though it's a plug-in hybrid. But I predict it will be full electric. And electromobility has a very local link with local energy. You saw with the example with this Amsterdam house, but also the example I just gave you with the battery storage and interaction. 80 to 90% of charging is done at home or at work. And that's also very logical, because that's the places where you park your car. So all the public charging infrastructure you see on the road, you don't see them often being used, and people say, it's not a big thing, and that's also correct, because people do not often charge in public areas. They charge at home or at work. Those are the primary charging stations. So the local energy grid, local energy connection, that's where the value lies with electromobility. And mobility and energy will have a link to in-car connectivity. It's still in that sense, a greenfield to see where the connection will lie, but it will go in combination with in-car connectivity together with charging infrastructure, together with energy company connections, etc. And that will create, I hope, kind of an interoperable system where people can hook onto to provide added value to all sorts of consumers or clients. In this case, I applaud basically very much what Geotab is also doing with the privacy case. It's a different topic, but basically they say, let's make it all completely open, because when it's open, then you get the most protection. Just to give you one example, because one example just jumps into my head. In the Netherlands, we also had a big issue with charging infrastructure and all these passes with interoperable systems. Everybody had their own system, right? So I have my own charging card, and you can only charge my card at this charging station. So back then, we helped initiating also this open platform of charging infrastructure and gave the code to everyone. And what happened is that technology of smaller companies started working on this code, starting improving this code, and that became the dominant code. So all of a sudden, this charging protocol is now the leading European charging protocol, and it was based on completely open sourced beginning. So it's always difficult where to end up with and when to start with things that are lying in the future, because on the one hand, you can work on a lot of trends and future stuff, and spend a lot of money on developing those things that might happen in the future. But the balance lies in finding the right balance between the things that lie on distance and things that you have to do today. So this quote, I like this quote because it makes it all practical. So it's proven that organizations focusing on the mid to long-term objective bring better results than the ones focusing primarily on short-term objectives. But the difficulty lies in finding the right balance. Thank you very much.